I know there's definitely some online courses you can take, or even just blogs to visit, those types of things, to really have conversations with other people in the technology industry to talk about what's going on, that type of thing. Those are all good things to take a look at. There's also places around Rochester where you can go to take little courses, or even if it's a one-night seminar on anything, those are good too.
And also most manufacturers have all kinds of training information, maybe not full courses, but at least information and things like that to keep current on new developments by Microsoft. And I think certainly the internet has changed a lot of things on how we're educated these days. So you can download books and white papers and things along those lines and keep your technology fresh. Not that it's not a challenge to find that and get them for free, but there is a lot of resources on the internet that you can take advantage of.
Like I said before, I mean, staying up. There's new technology it's coming faster and faster. So staying up is definitely important. For me, my staff, we have training requirements each year, so I sent some of my folks to VMware classes, Microsoft classes, Cisco classes. Some of us do a lot of self-study. I mean, just me personally, it's funny. I mean, I came out of college. I have a degree in political science, so I don't have any technical sort of formal training from college. So when I was in college, it was computer science programming. You couldn't take coursework in servers and infrastructure. It just wasn't available. It's changed dramatically today. But so I self-studied, got some Microsoft certifications, and just about a month ago, I just started studying for my CISSP. So it's computer security certification. It's not anything that is really required for me to do my job, but security is becoming an emerging field. And I'm preparing myself to be more marketable, or I can get that certification myself. I can apply it to the company I'm working for now, or who knows how it will help me down the road. So, I read an 1,100-page book, and it'll probably take me 4 or 5 months, but after I put the kids to bed, that's what I do. I read a few pages a night. So.
This isn't much of a shock, but I mean, the internet has just really transformed the way that we do things. And really, if you are interested in maintaining skills or getting new skills in a particular area, it's on the web. I mean, if you're interested in mobile computing, the stuff that's out there is incredible. I mean, you can download environments that will let you develop stuff for phones. I mean, even if you don't have the right phone, there's emulators that you can download. If you're interested in web development, I mean, there's a slew of tutorials and courses and things that are out there. I mean, my advice would be just get your hands dirty. Just get some experience with the resource. With the thing that the skills that you're interested in. It's out there. The other thing that I just kind of made me chuckle a little bit is that the next one says older technologies, and one of the ones that's listed is Unix as an older technology. Unix, believe me, Unix is really used a lot out there, and that's another technology that you can very easily get experience with. If you have a PC at home, You can download free Linux distributions. You can learn how to install it. You can learn how to administer it. And again, you can get your hands dirty. You can put servers up on it. You can do your own websites, all those sorts of things. So the tools are definitely out there. You just have to look. And, my advice is just do it, and turn to the web for help. It's amazing. I mean, you can Google just about anything, and you'll get an answer. A lot of them may not be good answers. Some of them are very good answers.
I see very rare opportunities. It's really a rarity to get an opportunity in some of the older technologies. I mean, it does come up now and again, but it's really rare these days. So I guess my piece of advice would be to go back to school and maybe take a course or two in something that you take interest in. I think that's really the best way to do it.
And I certainly agree. Even in our market, where we tend to work for a lot of small businesses that hold on to their technology way too long, I don't see a lot of demand for it, and usually that demand is not on a long-term basis. It's a short-term fix this, get me up and running, and we'll look at migrating to, I don't know, out of Windows 98. Like that. And it really is amazing. One of the major restaurant chains in town is running on a 2000 server. It's like, that thing's 11 years old. What are you doing? But do I see a long-term need for that? No, I don't see big positions for that. I do see short-term, and sometimes that knowledge is welcome. On the other hand, I don't see a lot of it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. If we had, for example, some legacy systems, some older systems, and I think the only need we would have for those types of skills is a short-term basis on how to help us transition off that old system onto the new. Would probably be a contract type position. Mainframe skills, things like that. I don't know how applicable they really are today. For my group, where I am today, it wouldn't be a skill that would it wouldn't translate. A lot of the infrastructure, networks, and things, while they've changed quite a bit, a lot of the concepts are still the same. And I think getting up to speed on those isn't all that difficult. But yeah, it's a tough one. I think you need to have some relevant something, some type of skill that's relevant and applicable today. When I'm posting for a position, I typically have a specific need. There's certain types of projects or technologies that we're implementing, or what's producing this need for me to add a person. And it's usually a certain set of projects or tasks or things like that. And it's probably going to be some newer technology that we're implementing. So typically what I'm looking for is someone who maybe already has that experience with some of the newer technology. So the older legacy systems, it's difficult. It doesn't really translate.
I think what I want to say is, don't be intimidated. And you might wonder, what is he saying here? I kind of find it interesting that I always remember growing up, my mom always wanted me to have short hair. And I would get a buzz cut every summer. And she would always say to me every summer, "You watch, short hair is going to come back." Damn it, she was right. And when I look at computing technology, it's sort of the same thing. Like, big buzzword these days is you hear a lot of people talk about cloud computing, right? But if you think about cloud computing a little bit, it's got some similarities with mainframe computing, right? I mean, back in the mainframe days, we had a big iron in the back of the closet, And then the terminals that you were working on were, they weren't the thin clients that we think of today, but they certainly were nowhere near as powerful as mainframes. And a lot of the concepts, ideas, problems, and things that they dealt with in the mainframe era are also applicable today. So the first thing that I want to say is, don't be intimidated. Yeah, you may have skills in some of these technologies that people aren't using, but those skills have given you some deep experience that you can apply to some of the newer things today. Okay? And I think it's definitely the case in order to compete, you're going to need some specific skills in the more current things. But, don't be intimidated, because you do have that, you do bring that experience, and I do think that's valuable.
And it depends on the company, who the hiring manager is, what has been their experience with candidates, that sort of thing. So I think that if you had, years past where you had a long-term position, and let's say in the last 5 years you've been contracting, then you can speak to that. Why have you been contracting? Maybe you wanted to give it a try, or maybe that's what was out there. So you can tell that story. And sometimes, people will think, oh, well, if they've been with the same company for 20 plus years, that's a good thing. Yes, they've been a loyal and stable employee, but do they have the variety in their background that we're looking for? That could come into question. If someone has been a career contractor and now wants to get into a direct hire position, sometimes can be difficult because they are viewed as a career contractor. But then on the flip side, some companies might say, but this person brings so much variety in their background, they've seen so much, they've had exposure to so much technology, they bring a lot to our company. So I don't think there's any one scenario that holds true for all companies. We kind of see everything.
I don't think I can add anything to that. That's well said. I think it does matter what you've done. And it really is just on a personal basis. There's some people that have hung out way too long at some companies and only to be downsized and have to look for a job. And there's people that have spent their life being contract workers and never really gotten an in-depth knowledge of something. Again, so when we interview somebody, we're going to look at the candidate and not, other than that they have continued to be productive, maybe not exactly what they've done in the past.
I'd say whether it's contract or permanent employee, for me, I'm looking at a candidate, it doesn't really matter. Looking at just a resume, potentially, seeing that someone was a contractor for a number of positions, I really don't make any assumptions. Some people just prefer contract work, and there's nothing wrong with that. People go through different phases in their lives where they like contract work and they maybe want to get back into something a little more stable. As someone who might hire, a candidate, I don't really read into that too much. Someone who worked 30 years or 20 years for one company might not be as attractive as someone who's worked as a contractor for a number of years, because that variety. I've seen positions where or candidates who were, let's say, a Lotus Notes administrator for 10 years, and now they're looking to get into something else. Being a Lotus Notes administrator in a very specific role for a number of years doesn't really translate over to my environment. We don't run Lotus Notes. You work in the industry but those skills don't translate. So if maybe you were a Lotus Notes administrator for 10 years, the past 2 years you've worked as a contractor on maybe some more current technologies, more applicable technologies, and that's I don't see any problem with that. That's I think that's pretty common. Of the resumes that I've seen.
I get asked quite a bit, is PMP required? that comes up a lot. I would say it's not always required. There are a few companies in Rochester that are absolutely adamant that someone has to have their PMP certification, but it doesn't come up all the time. So I would say if you have good experience, then that should be enough. If you want to get your PMP, that's a bonus, but I wouldn't say it's required for the majority of the opportunities that I see in IT project management. I think another skill that helps is if you've worked both large scale and small scale projects, that gives you variety in your background, and then your skills look desirable to a company that might have this or that. So variety in the background.
And I don't think we look at certification as much as what the candidate brings to the table. If they've got the experience but not the title, at least in my market, that's what would be more interesting.
And for me, we actually have an Office of Project Management. So at Garlock, the PMO doesn't have PMP certification. She's got 20 plus years of experience, and she just actually joined the company, and it comes up in the interview process, like, why didn't you get it? And her response was, I didn't think I really, my experience, trumps a PMP certification, and it did. We've got some other contract project managers, none of which have PMP certifications. But they've all been project managers in the past. So project management these days, at least where I am, you need to be organized, you need to have all those project manager sort of skills, but it's a lot of just people skills. Being able, like you mentioned about working in teams. We have a lot of projects now that cross over teams, different areas of the IT organization. You've got infrastructure, you've got app developers, database. You're working with vendors, managing those relationships, trying to keep that all together. That's really important. Having the certification of PMP, nice to have, but I think experience goes a lot further than just having that certification.
I don't think industry necessarily makes a difference unless you become a specialist in let's take telecom, for instance. If you have an industry-specific software that you've been working on, well, now you've sort of pigeonholed yourself into now the telecom industry, unless you can transition and use other development skills or something like that. So otherwise, I don't think industry really matters. If you're doing, web design for one company, you can do it for another. So I don't really feel like that makes a difference.
And I guess I would concur with that. I don't think the industries are all that specific anymore. Again, as long as you haven't gotten too much experience in one specific area that doesn't translate. But,
I think only in certain roles industry matters. You're maybe a business analyst or something like that, where you have specific knowledge. But if developers, some of those skills behind the scenes, but my group infrastructure, if you're a Cisco expert, in networking and telephone systems and things like that, those are common across many industries. So unless there's something very specific, I don't think it's all that critical. I've worked in manufacturing, medical device, professional services, telecom. I think maybe up into more management type roles, industry matters, but at the technical level, probably not as much.
And again, of course, my perspective on this is a little bit different because I'm looking at the other end of the pipeline, but I mean, that's what we do. The students that we're turning out we just give them solid computing skills. And they end up in a particular industry, and the employers that come around our IT at least will tell us that what they want out of our students are good, solid computing skills. They know their industry. They'll teach them what they need to know to survive in their particular industry. So, again, I'm not sure if there's a lot of people in here who are moving from one industry to another. That might be why the question is here, but I wouldn't let it worry me. As long as you've got those basic core computing skills and you've got the ability to learn new technologies and new things, I don't see any reason why you couldn't move from one area to another.
I guess as we move towards cloud computing, and some people say we've been in cloud computing all along, and it's not exactly a major role, and agree that we're kind of going back to the days where terminals and servers, terminals and mainframes is kind of what cloud computing is. I don't see that as a real game changer in the industry, though, other than to be knowledgeable about what it represents. Certainly mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, things like that have changed where we get the information. Again, has it really changed what we allow on the networks and things like that? Yeah, I guess it has a little bit, because a lot of that's outside of the networks these days. But I'm not sure if I see huge trends that change us from what our experience has been in the past.
So I think what I've seen over the past few years, it's a shift towards moving towards hiring a lot more contractors. Quite honestly, we hire a lot less full-time employees, or we do contract to hire. A lot of what we're doing these days is very project specific. So we may be rolling out a piece of technology, and instead of doing it ourselves or relying on an outside vendor to do a lot of the heavy lifting, we may bring on a few contractors for 6 months, a year, because you may need a certain specific set of skills for that short amount of time to get the project moving or implemented, and then as the project winds down, you can transition those ongoing administrative duties to your existing staff. So I wouldn't be deterred from looking at contract work. I think it's only going to be on the rise. We're doing it a lot more. I have people work for me in Europe and overseas. There's a lot of concerns there about hiring folks because if they don't work out, it's difficult to move them out. A lot of the laws and regulations to maybe terminate an employee are very difficult. So we can hire contract to hire. We're doing it here as well. I don't know if it's good or bad. I think there's pros and cons to both. But I think you'll see a lot less full-time positions and a lot more contract positions.
I think we probably touched on most of the things that I was going to say for this particular question. I mean, the environment's changing constantly. You got to stay on top of it, things along those particular lines. Another thing that I think might be important for you to think about, I know it's something that I have to constantly push myself to do, is you want to see you want to have an awareness and an understanding of how people are using the technology. For example, 3-4 years ago, I heard about this Twitter thing, and I wondered what this Twitter thing was all about. So I forced myself to get a Twitter account, and, of course, my daughter and, my kids and all their friends are Twittering, and it forced me to, get involved and kind of understand what it's about. And it wasn't so much a specific understanding of how Twitter works, but it was more an understanding of how people are using Twitter, and it kind of opened my eyes to social computing and social networking and how people are using that. And an understanding of that, I think, gives you an ability to bring something to an employer that might help them to actually create something or implement something that's really innovative, which I think is something that they're really looking for. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is it's easy for us to kind of back ourselves into a corner and to stick with the technology and the things that we know well. But I think one of the things that will serve you well, particularly in this industry, is to push yourself outside that comfort zone a bit and see what other people are using, because it'll give you a bigger picture and a bigger view of what's going on. And I think that big view is really important, and I think it's something that employers would actually value.